mansions of heaven. My spiritual body was taken to the great hall in heaven. I saw that I was playing in it, holding the support post and circling around it, squatting until I sat on my knees touching the soft floor that was cool and sparkling clear. The Lord Jesus who stood beside me just smiled at what I was doing. I stood up. Then the Lord Jesus invited me to walk to a place where there were many houses. The road we followed was a soft sandy glass road. The area was like a residential area. The Lord Jesus invited me to visit the area. Various types of houses were there. Some were large, medium and small. There were houses that were already made, half-finished, or newly built. Some houses had a small garden in their yard, others didn't. I asked the Lord Jesus, "Whose houses are these?" The Lord answered, "These are the homes of my children who served me while they were on earth." "Why are the houses different?" "There are big, small and medium." And the Lord said, "It depends on their service what they have done for me." I said, "You means the more service the better the house." "My dear, I do not see how much they serve me or how long they serve. I also do not see how busy they are working to serve me. I see the service of my children from their hearts. The more they are sincere, the pure in heart they serve me, the better and bigger their home will be. I see the hearts of my children. The more their heart please me, the more their lives please my heart. I will provide the best home, a more beautiful place to live here," said the Lord. "I do not see how much they serve me. Maybe what they do is not seen by others. I am the one who judge and look at their hearts." We continued to walk around the area. I said, "Lord, why are there already finished houses, but some are not yet, and some have just been built?" The Lord said, "If the house is ready, it means that the mission of the believer owner in the world is finished. He will be called home soon. If the house is not yet finished being built, it's not yet time to go home for the believer. There are still a lot of things to do in the world. If a new house is about to be built, it means that he is just about to start to serve me." I walked with the Lord while occasionally my hand touched the flowers in the yard of the houses we passed. My eyes were then fixed on the trees opposite the houses. I walked alone to a tree like a curious child. I analyzed the tree. The stem was not so thick, but the leaves were dense and the size was not too small, just like citrus leaves. It was covered in fruit, red mixed with yellow and light green. I wanted to eat the fruit so much that my mouth began to water. Physically my throat felt dry, but I did not dare to ask for it. Then from behind me came the voice of the Lord Jesus so soft saying, "Do you want that fruit?" I quickly turned towards the Lord Jesus nodding my head with a smile. Then the Lord Jesus came forward and approached the tree. His hand picked the fruit and gave it to me. When I received it, from the fruit stalk that had just been picked, new fruit began to appear slowly. I was stunned to witness this miracle. Then I ate the fruit. When I bit and swallowed it, I felt strength in my spiritual body that can be felt right through to my physical body. The fruit was like a Fuji apple, but not an apple. It tasted sweet like pear but not pear. It was fresh and had lots of water. I ate it until it was finished, really very tasty and fresh. After I finished it, my physical body felt fresh. There was new strength flowing into my physical body. I was back in the area with many homes in heaven. Next to me was the Lord Jesus. The ground that I tread on was soft sand made of clear glass. I was in front of a finished house, with a small garden in the yard. The house was not so big. I was curious and wanted to enter it. Like a child who pulls on his father's hand, so I pulled the hand of the Lord Jesus. "Lord, I want to see the contents of this house," I said while looking at the face of the Lord Jesus who only smiled at my behavior. Once inside, I was shocked. "Lord, why is there nothing?" There was only a table with one object on it like a flower vase. The object was brownish yellow shining bright, not of gold because the color was not golden yellow. I touched the walls of the house. They were not like the walls of my house or the homes of people in the world. They were like marble or marble white sparkling limestone. The floor was also not like the floor in my house. The floor was clear like glittering glass but did not hurt the eyes. The air in this house was also cool. The person who owns this house has not finished their duties in the world yet. My dear, there is still a lot of work to be done so that this house can be full of furniture. said the Lord. I just nodded. God invited me to another house. This house was also finished, but it didn't have a garden. I said, Lord, how come there isn't a garden? My child, I always know what my children love, meaning the person who owns this house doesn't like plants or gardening. When I went into it, the house was a bit bigger than the one before. There are a lot of home furnishings, some are of gold, silver, gemstones, very beautiful. I said, this house seems to have a complete set of furniture, meaning the person is coming home. No, my child, he still has work to do. I call my children home when they have completed their assignments according to their respective vocation. Besides, there is no name written in front of the house as a sign of ownership of this house. I stepped out of the house and saw it from the front. I just nodded my head, then sat back against the door frame of the house. I was stunned, amazed. How beautiful. I call my children home according to my will, and at the time I set, the person who pleases the Lord's heart will have a beautiful place in heaven. The more pure, sincere, and pleasing to the Lord the heart is, the more beautiful place in heaven will be. The court of heaven. When I met the Lord, not far in front of me was a palatial building that was very beautiful and magnificent. It turned out to be the palace of the Lord. The Lord Jesus walked me to the building. When entering the court of the palace, there was someone who stood up, a man who was gallant, handsome, and wore a crown. His face reflected wisdom. As I was approaching, I learned that it was King David. He said, I am here only because of the grace of God. In fact, I am a person who does not deserve to be here because I have done acts that hurt the Lord, but because of God's grace, I can be in this place. The grace of the Lord gave me favor. When I met King David, I was discouraged because I felt that I had not done anything meaningful to God. The extraordinary King David said that he was in heaven only because of the grace of God. The Lord said, I like David, he is pleasing to me. When he strayed from his path, I rebuked him, and he did not harden his heart but immediately repented, turned to me and humbled himself. Many of my children stray from the path, but unfortunately, I am disappointed in their attitude. Many of them harden their hearts and did not repent when I rebuked them. I was stunned to see the palace of the Lord, so beautiful. In the courtyard there was a garden with colorful flowers with soft petals. I approached the garden, which was full of beautiful fragrance, so much so I could smell it in my room too. Even after I finished praying, the scent still lingered in my room. I walked to the beautiful palace with the Lord Jesus. Upon arrival, the gate was wide open. The floor of the palace was truly amazing, made of gold. I turned to the left, to the gate, which was also made of gold adorned with pearls, which I touched and caressed for a long time. At first, I stood looking at the pearls, then slowly inched down to squat while feeling and touching the palace floor. Really beautiful gate studded with pearls. The door color was sparkling ivory white and the floor color was bright yellow. Revelation 21:21. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. The Lord's palace is truly beautiful. The Lord is truly rich. Gold, which in the world is so highly valued, is used in heaven as floor material to be trampled. Pearls, which in the world are used to show off one's riches and are expensive, in heaven are used only for door decorations. I saw the pillars in the palace were also sparkling yellow in color. Apparently these pillars were also made of gold. I also touched the pillars. On the right and left side of the pillars were wide stairs going up to the balcony, which were also made of sparkling gold. On those balconies were many white-robed people who praised, glorified and worshipped the Lord by raising their hands. Since I entered the Lord's palace, I never stopped touching the doors, floors, balconies and pillars. When I entered a place further into the palace, I heard the praises and glorification of the Lord without ceasing. Here everyone will offer praise and worship every time, at any time. There is no end, rest or tiredness. The Lord Jesus said, even when I had finished praying, my ears felt like I was still hearing praise, worship, and glorification of God. Glorious praise of worship, so beautiful to hear that I shuddered and my whole body trembled. Today I especially worshipped God and gave thanks to Him, and conveyed personal things to Him. In the afternoon I returned to pray in my room. I was in the palace of the Lord, precisely on a balcony where many people were praising and worshipping the Lord. The Lord Jesus was not beside me, I was at the edge, standing among the people belonging to the Lord who praised and worshipped the Lord. In front of me was the seat of the Lord's throne, shining golden yellow, surrounded by beautiful jewels. There was a person sitting in the chair, a king in a magnificent purple robe, with a beautiful golden yellow crown surrounded by gemstones. The Lord Jesus was that person, in a very luxurious king's robe. His face was full of authority, firm but friendly. His person radiated glory. Everyone, including me, knelt to glorify the Lord Jesus as the King of Kings. Unable to withstand his glory, everyone, including me, fell down. There were cries of exultation to the Lord Jesus, not tears of sadness but tears of joy and amazement. The presence of God was so strong that all the people bowed down to glorify the name of the Lord, so much so that my physical ear could hear everyone praising the Lord. Holy, holy is the Lord, you are a holy God, King of Kings. Honor and glory only unto you. With my spiritual ears, what I heard was not in the Indonesian language, but other languages. However, in my physical ear, I heard everything in Indonesian. There was a number of similar words such as hallelujah and amen, although the pronunciation was different. In front of me, beside the Lord Jesus, were many angels who played musical instruments, praising the name of the Lord. Also, there were many angels dotted amongst the people of the Lord, participating in praising the name of the Lord. No one was silent. I returned to the palace of the Lord Jesus. The Lord Jesus was beside me. I walked to the very end near the palace wall. The palace walls consisted of beautiful gemstones, from the bottom right to the top. The gemstones were of different colors. The colors of these gemstones were not random but neatly arranged per line. The walls of the Lord's palace consist of several rows of beautiful gemstones, each row of different colors. The first line with a certain thickness was black, the second line with a certain thickness was red. The sequences were as follows: black, bright red, red heart, purplish red, purple, bluish purple. The color is rather bright, dark blue, light blue, bluish was reddish and purplish, dark brown, reddish brown, bright, yellow, green, white. I saw many angels in God's palace. There were two types of angels, winged and not winged. Their height was approximately 2 meters. The Lord Jesus explained that angels who have no wings are angels of praise and worship, so these angels hold musical instruments, while angels who have wings are angels of war, usually to help the children of God in spiritual warfare, so they carry weapons for warfare like swords and arrows. Then I went back to walk with the Lord Jesus and met with John, the most beloved disciple of the Lord Jesus, his face radiating tenderness. The disciple John exhorted me in these terms: live close to the Lord Jesus Christ, be close and intimate with the Lord, not just wanting something from him. The warehouse in heaven, the weapons of war. I was invited by the Lord to walk to a place in heaven, a place that I had never visited. It was located beside the Lord's palace, but in the back part and not separated from the palace. Once I entered the room, I saw many weapons of war such as swords, arrows, shoes, headgear, armor, etc. All the war equipment that was there was very complete. When I approached to see the weapons, they were a little dusty. I wondered why there was dust in the Lord's room. This is just a sign, my child, so you know that my children rarely ask for these tools. These tools are tools for spiritual warfare. Many of my children do not like spiritual warfare, do not like the process of life, do not like fighting. They just want to ask for instant physical and material blessings. You will see the second room also the same, my child. In the room there is also dust. The second room? There is dust. What room, O Lord? You see for yourself. Come, I will show you, said the Lord. Then I walked with the Lord to the second room, jewelry warehouse. In this room, there was a lot of beautiful stone objects. When I looked, it turned out to be jewels. All the jewelry one can ever want was here, starting from bracelets, rings, necklaces, earrings. Wah, very good, O Lord, very beautiful. But the Lord was indeed correct. These things were rather dusty. Who is this for, Lord? These jewels are very beautiful. These are the jewelry that I provide for my brides so that they become beautiful brides before me, but unfortunately, many of my children do not understand this. I am coming soon. I want all my children to be my beautiful brides, but only a few of them want to be my bride. My bride is a spiritual adult. I want my children to be spiritual adults in order to be my bride, but they only want to be children. They only want to be spiritual children who do not want to grow spiritually into spiritual adults. They only ask for blessings, anointing. Rarely do they want to grow spiritually into spiritual adults. Very few want to know me, my person, to be close to me. They do not even need to ask for things because I have provided for them. As long as they are close to me, whatever they need I have provided for them. I only want my children to be close to me, to be a person of spiritual maturity, to be a beautiful bride, to be Bible figure. Then I met several Bible figures. The Lord Jesus invited me to meet them and introduced their names. Many Bible figures gave messages to me. The first one I met was Moses. As I read in the Bible, Moses was 120 years old, but in heaven I was surprised to see Moses looking so much younger, in his 40s. Moses said, "I regret not being able to enter the land of Canaan that the Lord promised because of my disobedience." Obey the Lord always. Whatever God tells you to do it obediently. After that I met with Paul. Paul's message: surely the trials that you experience are ordinary trials that will not exceed your strength. If you experience any serious problems, believe there will be a way out, and that the trials will not be more than what you can bear. After that I met with Joshua. Joshua's message: be strong and courageous, strengthen your heart. Whatever happens, keep your eye upon the Lord, worship Him obediently and faithfully, never let your heart be bound to idols. I continued walking with the Lord Jesus. Then I met with Abraham. His message: even though you have not seen the promises of the Lord fulfilled in your life, you must believe in the Lord. Nothing in the Lord is too difficult. Everything is possible even though your surroundings do not allow you to receive God's promises. Then I met with Noah. His message: live as close friends with God. Do not look around you that can weaken your faith in God, but you must continue to live as close friends with God. Finally, I met Job. His message: you have no right to your life, even the smallest part of your life, not even your hair. Only God has the right to your life because God owns your life. So, whatever happens to your life, even the worst, you should never grumble to the Lord or say that the Lord is evil or does not love you. After I met Job, then I met Joseph. His message was: hold fast to any vision or promise that the Lord has given through dreams or through the Word of God. Keep and protect the vision. Fight until it happens in your life. Whatever happens in your worst life, don't forget that vision, but assume that the events in your life are part of the beautiful plan of God, until the vision of God is achieved in your life. After that I met Jeremiah. His message: every call from the Lord that happens in your life, accept and do it. Do not consider yourself incapable, because the Lord will give you abilities. Do not be afraid, because when the Lord calls you, the Lord has equipped you with all the best. In fact, the Lord has designed and known your life before you were born until the end of your life. After that I met with Isaiah, who said, go wherever the Lord sends you. Never ever dispute with the Lord, because the Lord knows better what will happen in your life when the Lord sends you. Surely the Lord will give His power to you. Then I met Ezekiel, who said, never avoid the Lord's call even though it is not according to your ability. Maybe you feel odd about the Lord's call. Even worse, the people around you and the people closest to you also feel it odd, but work on that call until the glory of the Lord is revealed to you. There I met more extraordinary Bible characters who loved the Lord. I met Malachi. His message: do not ever steal the Lord's possession. What belongs to the Lord belongs to the Lord. When you obey the word of God, surely the Lord will return your possessions. God is rich, He never owes. I met Daniel. His message: every statement of the Lord concerning the end times will be fulfilled these days. Defend and persevere in your faith in God. Stay faithful, worship Him with respect and fear. I met Elisha. His message: ask the Lord to be equipped with the Spirit of God to make you strong in facing every challenge and problem in your life. I also met Elijah, and he said, in these last days, There will be many Jezebel spirits who crush and oppress the children of God, spirit and soul, so that physically the children of God will feel depressed and sick. Many children of God will give up, be disappointed in the Lord, discouraged and think that the Lord never helped and cared for their lives. Children of God must realize that when faced with any serious problems, do not be afraid. They must believe in God, that God always helps. I was tired, I fell asleep, during which time, I met the Lord Jesus again. Seeing him standing on the beautiful glass sandy road, he seemed to have been waiting for me for some time. I was very happy because the Lord Jesus was waiting for me. Immediately the Lord Jesus took my hand and asked me to walk. Sometimes my children do not realize that I have been waiting for them for a long time. I want my children to be close to me. I want them to talk to me. But they are too busy with their own affairs. Only when they get into trouble do they seek me, only to find a solution to their problems. Even then, I already feel happy they want to see me, even if it is only to get a solution to their problems. But after that they forget me. All they want is my blessings, my miracles, healings, and all that I have for them. They do not want me personally. When the Lord spoke, I looked at him, and visible on his gentle and loving face was a radiance of sadness. He truly is the Lord who loves us. We are his children, his belonging. I continued to walk with the Lord and met with James. He delivered the message, do the word of God faithfully, don't just listen, do not deviate from the word of the Lord, live a life pleasing God. Then I met Peter, who said, do not ever turn from your faith in the Lord. Never once have you hurt the Lord. I regret that in my life I hurt the Lord, even though I was always with the Lord. But thanks be to the Lord, I am a coward who can be here. It is because of the mercy of the Lord, the power of the Lord, that made my life change. So I dare to preach the gospel and be a blessing to many people, so that until the end of my life I maintain my faith in him. After that I met with Daniel. His message, you must worship your Lord with all your heart until the end of your life. Let nothing shake your faith in God, then everything will be revealed to you until the end of time. I was shocked. Wow, I overslept, but why did I meet the Lord while I was sleeping? I felt impolite of not being in a praying position, but in a sleeping position. I can reveal anything through anything, anytime, anywhere, and in whatever you do, you can meet with me. Because I, God, am infinite. With your spirit, you can meet with me anytime, anywhere, whenever you do anything. I am not a God that can be found only by religious rules. It must be this, it must that. I am not a God limited by religious rules. Many people are bored and tired of persevering in their faith in me, because many of them limit me. With their minds, they limit my work in their lives, that many of them become trapped in the routine of worship, religious rules. They become tired and bored. They do not grow spiritually, that they give up following me. Meet me, talk with me anytime, anywhere, when you do anything. I am the infinite God, and responsibilities that I have to do. I have to go to college and work. Do not be afraid, my dear. I am the one who arranges everything. I am with you, said the Lord while hugging me. I nodded my head. Oh Lord, I want to, I said softly while shedding tears. I prayed with the church prayer team. God brought my spiritual body to a different place from the place I saw yesterday. The Lord and I stood before a large bronze-colored gate, shining brightly. With curiosity I touched the door and wanted to enter it.